guys, welcome back. Today we are going to continue talking about the denizens of Athel Loren. And today we're going to start with the Way Watchers. Guardians of the paths leading into Athel Loren, the Way Watchers are silent and deadly sentinels. They are masters of concealment and have trained themselves so that they can lie unnoticed and unmoving for days on end before springing into action to slay a startled and unfortunate prey. Most commonly, the way of the Watcher is the natural progression for those who have trained as scouts, though more rarely unblooded youths feel the call of the forest coursing through their blood. Over time, an elf may find that they are more comfortable in the embrace of the forest than in the presence of his or her kin. They will drift further from the halls, spending more and more time in the forest, honing their deadly skills. Many never return from this journey, for there are corners of Athel Loren that are dangerous even to the elves. Yet those who survive are skilled beyond compare, and hardened by their experiences. Taciturn and solitary individuals, Way Watchers can let years pass between visits to Wood Elf halls, where they are perfectly at ease within their forest homeland. Way Watchers survive by their wits and cunning in the wilds, gathering and hunting what they need, and honoring the ancient spirit of Athel Loren through their day-to-day actions. On the rare occasion that a Way Watcher returns to the halls, they stand apart from all others, even family, for in their own distinct way they are closer to the forest than other elves. No two Way Watchers behave in the same way, for each is taught by their experiences and trials rather than any formal system of training. Long years of practice with their chosen weapon has left each Way Watcher capable of a tremendous rate of fire, able to loose an unerring stream of black-shafted arrows one after another, seemingly without pause and without loss of accuracy. Few who have not seen the skill of the Silent Watchers believe the truth in these tales, and few who do see it survive to speak of it. Nonetheless, it cannot be denied that any who enter Athel Loren run the risk of being slain without warning by the Way Watchers, cut down by unseen archers, or falling prey to their cunningly constructed traps. When the call to battle comes, the Way Watchers band together into small groups. Their uncanny skills naturally lend themselves to the arts of disruption and surprise, appearing silently next to a vulnerable enemy, and vanishing as quickly as they came before his body hits the ground. War Dancers. War Dancers rove across the length and breadth of Athel Loren in tightly knit troops, treading paths and secret ways that few others know of or dare use. They are welcomed to elven halls and treated with the utmost respect, yet also with more than a little fear and wariness. Other wood elves regard the War Dancers as wild and unpredictable, and not without cause, for they are the servants and worshippers of the elven trickster god Loek, a deity whose conventions are a mystery to those not already committed to his path. Sometimes known as feast masters for their role in great festivals, the servants of Loek lead the elves in music and rejoicing, and perform the intricate dance rituals that reenact the history of Athel Loren, a form of storytelling just as important to the Wood Elves as the more conventional methods of songsmithing and writing. To a war dancer, even other elves appear to be moving painfully slowly, for every move made by one of Loek flows into the next, and thence the next one after that, without conscious thought or guidance. Foregoing armor, the war dancers decorate themselves with swirling designs, and dye their hair in bright colors, taking on the roles of mythical figures and ferocious warriors, their form of movement and even their fighting style, paying homage to the one who inspires their dance. In battle, war dancers are deadly warriors, leaping over the enemy and twisting mid-air to strike them from behind, darting out of the way of blows, and able even to dodge incoming arrows. Such is their sublime skill and grace that they dance rings around their enemies, darting in to strike fatal blows, and pirouetting elegantly out of harm's way before a foe can react. To many, they seem like forest demons, intangible and unassailable beings who cannot be thwarted or denied, whether by steel, stone, or strength of will. The heralds of Loek are made even more formidable through their war dances, the favored rituals of the trickster god. No rhythm is called for these dances, nor are instructions issued. Instead, each dancer instinctively settles upon the correct pattern to strengthen and complement the dance of the rest of the troupe, an effect that creates a web of movement as graceful and beautiful as it is deadly. Each dance functions not only as a different discipline of battle, but also as an affirmation of faith and a reenactment of a past victory. In this way, the war dancers celebrate their great triumphs of the past, even as they carve the shape of a new one upon the bones of their enemies. Warhawk Riders. Many large birds of prey live in Athel Loren, especially where it covers the foothills, ravines, and crags of the Grey Mountains, making their eyries high amongst the towering pinnacles of rock. These hawks and shrikes commonly grow to far grander proportions than similar species found elsewhere in the Old World, though why this should be remains a mystery. Some scholars speculate that such birds were once a common sight across many lands, but have long since been hunted into extinction in the more accessible places, whilst others claim they have been changed by magic. Wherever the truth lies, the hawks of the Grey Mountains commonly grow to such a vast size, boasting wingspans that can average 15 to 20 feet. Indeed, though most elves live beneath the protective shade of Athel Loren, there are those who crave the more sparsely forested uplands of the Grey Mountains, and so a strange kinship has developed between the two races. Upon the middle slopes of the mountains, elven halls are fashioned close about the great rocky spires in which the hawks make their nests, eyries adorned with the sun-bleached bones of those who have dared intrude upon their territory. A fledgling chick raised by an elf develops a powerful, nigh unbreakable connection with its bond master. Should it be required, a hawk raised in such a manner will carry its rider into battle without question, swooping upon the foe and rending with its cruel beak and swift talons. This bond ties both parties together, for the elves who choose to become warhawk riders are bound over to the needs and care of their mount, just as the hawk is to the elf. As time passes, the lives and essences of both rider and hawk become more and more entwined, so that they almost become one creature, existing for the call of the hunt and the thrill of the chase alone. In this way, an intruder who strays into the pine-strewn crags faces not only the fury of the hawks, but also that of the elves, as several dwarf expeditions have found to their cost. Flying high above the treetops of Athel Loren, the Warhawk riders scout the area for approaching enemies, and are skillful enough to guide their Warhawks down through the trees to strike at intruders should the occasion demand it. Those who ride the Warhawks display phenomenal agility and balance, able to launch volleys of arrows while their mount flies at full speed through the forest. Windrider kindreds of Sethyla, sometimes known as Brethren of Seth or Dawn Riders. The Windrider kindreds hail mostly from the Pine Crags, where their mounts live unrestrained by the dense forest canopy of the lower reaches of Athel Loren. Members of the Windrider kindreds are often reckless, secure in the knowledge that the swiftness of their mount can carry them unharmed through great danger. The name Sethala has evolved from the elven root word Sethai, meaning flight, wind, and cry in the far mountains. Wild Riders of Kurnos. The Wild Riders of Kurnos are Orion's personal guard. As aggressive and impulsive as he, they are fey and dangerous creatures who are no longer truly the elves they once were, but are now a part of the Wild Hunt. Throughout the winter months, while their king's spirit is dormant, they watch over King's Glade with eyes aglow with fairy fire, unspeaking and unmoving save to challenge those who have come to the most sacred of groves. Their authority is absolute, for in accepting the honor of becoming a wild rider, they have become severed from Wood Elf society in all ways except that of service to their king. Though they are revered and honored, most elves avoid dealings with the kin of Kurnos where possible. Intimidated by the aura of power and otherworldly presence of the tall warriors, who are now as much forest spirit as they are elf. Once a warrior's foot is set upon the path of the wild rider, there can be no return. Yet none refuse its call, for it is the highest honor that can be bestowed. When winter rolls into spring and the ritual of Orion's rebirth begins, his wild riders lead the ceremony, binding themselves anew to the Ever-King with each stage in the ritual. In a night of magic and terror, when ghostly shapes and eerie cries haunt the glades, the Lord of Athel Loren is roused once again from his deep sleep. The clarion cry of Orion's horn rings out across the moors and heath surrounding the forest, and the wild hunt begins anew. All of Athel Loren trembles as Orion's footsteps thunder through the forest, gathering speed and followers with every stride. In his wake come the wild riders, made stronger and more ferocious by the awakening of their lord, and mounted upon the swiftest of steeds. Only the bravest or most foolhardy individuals remain abroad, when the horns of the wild riders answer that of Orion, for their otherworldly tones invoke the fear of the prey in all who hear them. Such an instinct is well-founded, for there is no mercy to be had from the wild riders, who are as driven and deadly as their lord. Anyone foolish enough to be espied by them is ridden down without mercy, their death a sacrifice to the purity of the hunt and glory of the king in the woods. Younger kindreds of Heroith. Excuse me. A kindred that tends to kindred, a mistrusted kindred by other wood elves. Most regard them as not understanding balance, and they are therefore dangerous, often the first to react violently. The name Arrowith has evolved from the elven root word Arathoi, meaning youth, boundless energy, and jealousy. Elven steeds. Descended from the purest of all equine bloodlines, the steeds of the wood elves are swift and graceful, with an agility that cannot be matched by the lesser breeds employed in other kingdoms. Where the Bretonnian warhorse and the stallions of the imperial stables are bred for strength, endurance, and dog-like loyalty, the horses of Athel Loren are trained from birth to be swift, agile, and cunning, to work in partnership with their riders, and not merely to be broken to their will. The steeds reared in this way form a lasting bond with their rider, resulting in a darting and dangerous grace few other cavalrymen can match. In times between war, the horses are pastured in hidden glades until their rider summons them once more. Those rare outsiders who catch a glimpse of such a beast at play upon the heath often refuse to believe that these horses are truly mortal, assuming instead that some strange fey creature has crossed their path. In truth, there is little more magical about the steeds of Athel Loren than any other inhabitant of the wood, merely the boundless joy of a creature born into freedom and not into bondage. Glade Rider Kindreds. Kindreds of Sehenlu, also known as Kindred of Equos, in the southwest, Horsemasters, Saddleborn, and the Riderkin. Okay, it's spelled Ridderkin, but I'm assuming that's a typo. A noble that rides an elven steed will often be from a kindred of Sehenlu, or was once a part of one of those kindreds. The name Sehenlu has evolved from the elven root word Senlui, meaning swiftness and accuracy. Forest dragons. At first thought, it seems incredible that a creature as vast as a dragon could make its home in the dense forests of Athel Loren. Yet, in the deepest recesses of the chasm glades, lurk a distinct race of great sky worms, who long ago adapted to life amongst the greenwood. Protected by the forest canopy and shielded by the sheer rock faces of the chasms from the attentions of young heroes seeking to make names for themselves, the dragons thrived and multiplied. Such providence has proved itself a stark contrast to other places in the old world, where dragons and their kin have long since either been slain or driven into the mountains. Nothing dwells in Athel Loren without being changed, and the forest dragons are no exception. Like certain groups of wood elves, the dragons have slowly been made over into an aspect of the forest, and can almost no longer be considered beings in their own right, but an extension of the forest's will to survive and prosper. Though still voracious predators, the dragons hunt only when the forest has need of them, resting in a state of hibernation the remainder of the time. Should a foe too mighty for Athel Loren's tree spirits intrude upon the sanctuary of the wood, the forest will awaken one, or sometimes several, of these great beasts to serve as a steed for a worthy highborn. Such a counter is as one-sided as it is savage, for few creatures can resist the breath of a forest dragon, a cloying green vapor that induces a raging fever in all who breathe it, sapping their will and driving them into a coma from which there is no awakening. Their duty done, and their appetites satisfied by the flesh of the foe, the dragons then return once more to their silent slumbers, until called upon once again. treasured more than the great stag, a creature that the wood elves revere as representing the true soul of the forest. Wherever the truth of its nature lies, the great stag is unquestionably a magical creature, though apparently one of a nobler caste than the unicorn. Such a beast only ever seems to appear in portentous times, commonly when great danger threatens the forest, though one is occasionally in evidence at times of great celebration, and is interpreted as a great blessing when it does appear. Once or twice in a generation, a great stag may seek out a particularly noble or courageous wood elf and consent to be their steed in a battle to come. Such a thing is seen as a boon beyond all others, for not only is the stag a formidable opponent in battle, its very presence can inspire those about it to get greater heights of bravery. Infrequently encountered as the great stags are, to see the white hart of Athel Loren, a mighty stag of unsurpassed nobility and grace, is rarer still. Only one of these noble animals is ever sighted at one time, and it is a common belief amongst the Azrai that there has only ever been one, that it is an immortal facet of the forest that neither grows old nor dies. Vengeance kindreds, kindreds of Talu, a very small kindred devoted to revenge for acts of particular harm, either to Athel Loren or personally. This is an unusual kindred in that those who join it only do so for the fulfillment of a particular vendetta, and they then return to their former kindred. To stay too long within the kindred of Talu is particularly dangerous. One cannot leave the kindred without fulfilling the reason he or she entered it, and elves will only become one of this kindred very rarely. Those belonging to this kin are known by names such as Rift Blades and Morn Singers. The name Talu has evolved from the elven root word Talui, meaning hatred or vengeance. Unicorns. Though they in many ways resemble large and powerful horses, unicorns are very different beasts, as the single horn that protrudes from their foreheads suggests. Like all the magical creatures of Athel Loren, they form part of the web of consciousness that weaves the forest together, and are something quite fundamentally different to that which they appear. Unicorn ivory is a much sought-after prize in certain corners of Bretonian society, and many a gallant knight has met his end pursuing a unicorn deep into Athel Loren. The knights invariably follow the unicorns for many miles, the beast staying just slightly out of reach the entire time. Just as the brave warrior thinks he has cornered his prize, the creature disappears without warning, coincidentally within feet of a swarm of vengeful spites or coldly vigilant way-watchers. Being magical creatures themselves, the very presence of a unicorn is harmful to other creatures summoned or created through sorcerous means. The selfish nature of the unicorn means that it tends to feel no kinship with such creatures, despite their common origins. If anything, they pity such beings for their ill luck in not being created as unicorns. Curiously, unicorns tend to have an underlying affinity for those that possess knowledge of the arcane arts. They are drawn to female mages as moths to a flame, as the taste of true magic is somewhat intoxicating to them. Most elven mages find this an acceptable situation, as a tame, or at least willing unicorn, is an excellent and durable steed, though it would be wrong to assume that the beast is broken to the will of the rider. They simply both tread the same path for a while. Furthermore, the unusual nature of the unicorn provides the mage with a measure of protection against hostile magics, with a devastating spell often resulting in little more than a slightly inebriated and emboldened steed. And last, but not least, great eagles. There has always been a great bond of kinship between the elves and the great eagles, stretching back to the birth of the elven race. That bond remains strong between the wood elves and the noble avians, and many families of eagles choose to make their homes in the heights of the Grey Mountains, close by the borders of Athel Loren. More intelligent and nobler of aspect than the smaller warhawks that live on the lower mountain slopes, the eagles are creatures of unceasing vigilance, possessed of an abiding loathing for creatures of evil heart. Ever alert to the events occurring in the lands beneath them, the great eagles unceasingly carry news to the elven nobles that dwell far below, giving them a welcome and often crucial advance warning of invasion or strife. On rare or desperate occasions, an eagle may offer himself as a mount to a particularly trusted elf, a great honor in the eyes of the wood elves. Such acts invariably form the start of a great and enduring friendship that continues to bind both parties, even after death. And with that, we have explored virtually all of the denizens of Athel Loren. It would seem, being as this is a 6th edition army book, that perhaps the Sisters of the Thorn did not exist at this time. Which is unfortunate because I find the Sisters of the Thorn to be one of the most interesting parts of the army. It's not every army that has a non-character unit that can cast spells, and I think that that's really quite cool. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I think we might do more of this, looking at the specific the characteristics of the individual members of an army rather than the armies as a whole, because I think it gives you an interesting insight into the character of the units that you're fielding, which I think that's really interesting. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.